All right, so this is kind of an odd collection of different things to talk about, right? But it's all about lifestyle, and one of the things that I like is one of the parts of my job that I really love is the fact that I can say to people, you may be struggling with something, there may be a lot of different ways to help you. Because sometimes I have people who come in and they say, Dr. Mary, I like you, but you're a doctor and you push all those pills. I don't want any part of that. I don't want any drugs. Don't give me drugs. Drugs are bad. Vaccines are bad. I don't want any part of that. And I say, okay, what are you open to? Can we do exercise? Can we talk about food? Can we talk about other things? Sometimes I have people who come in and say, Dr. Mary, don't talk to me about my diet. I don't want to hear anything about that. I've got, I want pills to make me better. And I'll say, okay, we can talk about that. So there's lots of things, and like I said earlier, take what works for you, take what works at this point in your life, because what works is different at different phases of our life. And I'll say that about exercise. So I want to talk a little bit about how our brains work and why they work, and I'm going to try not to get really nerdy on you, okay? So, input matters. How do we get input into our lives? Well, first of all, our senses. What are the 5 senses?
Smell, hear, see, feel,
taste.
taste.
Yeah. So all those are part of our senses. Secondly, another part of our input is what we put into our bodies. So, and we put, of course, food into our bodies, but we also put other things into our bodies. We might put preservatives into our bodies. If we work in a chemical-laden atmosphere, we might be putting chemicals into our bodies. Here in New Hampshire, we're probably putting some radon into our bodies every time we go into our basement. There's a lot of different substances, some of which we have control over and some of which we don't. I think everybody felt when the Canadian wildfires were going on, even people who didn't have allergies, people were like, I don't know what's going on, I've got this scratchy stuff in the back of my throat. It was because we were all inhaling a lot more particulate matter at that time. There's other things we also put into our body, some of which we're aware of and some of which we're not. So things like light is something we're putting into our body. Light has an impact on our eyes, but it also has an impact on our pineal gland in our brain. So that's why when there's a sunny day, the spring is coming, the sun comes out, first day there's no snow on the ground, everybody kind of goes around and goes, yeah, life's a little better. But in February, you go to Dunkin' Donuts and there's a line because everybody's like, it's February. This just stinks. I need a donut to get through today. I need an extra shot of espresso or something in my coffee. So there's a lot of things that come into our bodies through a variety of means, some of which we have control over and some of we don't. Our air quality, electrical impulses, things like that all affect us. We take what comes into our body and we interact with that. So our brain reacts to our environment in predictable ways. It's called stimulus and response. Does that bring back any memories from high school biology class where stimulus and response, we have a great gift. And Judy encouraged me to read a book that I'm blanking on at the moment, that was written by a Jewish psychiatrist who was in the prison camps. And one of the things that he said was he came out of that experience, of course scarred, but he came out of that experience very positively and developed a whole new branch of therapy as part of his experiences. And what he said was that every human being always has one gift left to them, and that's how to respond to your circumstances. You may be in
It was Man's Search for Meaning by
Viktor Frankl, thank you, Man in Search of Meaning. It's a great book. It wasn't at all what I expected from what I'd heard about it, but it's well worth reading. And we have that choice always, is how are we going to respond to our circumstances? So there's a lot of things we can't control, but as adult human beings, there are a lot of things we can control. And so I want to talk about that. We have a great gift. We have something called free will, which is the ability to make decisions, to make choices, and not everything. And as Judy and Ricardo both said, we can't control our past, but what we can control is our present. One question that's important to ask is, how much do you want to be controlled by your past? And how much do you want to choose your future? You may not be able to control the fact that you may live with somebody who wants to watch the news all day, every day. But you may be able to control whether you stay in that room or not. You may be able to control whether you walk out of the house or not. Okay? I see some elbows being thrown here. You can negotiate. This is my husband's a news junkie, so this is from a little bit from my own experience. And he's a politician, so he kind of has to watch the news. So I can't even say, honey, you don't need to be watching that, because he actually does. But what I can say is, I'll be home by such and such a time. After that, can we watch something else? So we negotiate. So we have a lot of those options. In our brain and in our bodies, information is transmitted by chemicals and electrical impulses. So when you look at the brain, there are what are called neurotransmitters, and those neurotransmitters send messages through our brain. They send messages through our nervous system, and when we have too much or too little, it can cause physical problems. So if you don't have enough dopamine in your body, you get Parkinson's disease. If you don't have enough cortisol in your body, you get Addison's disease. So those chemicals are very, very important to how our bodies function, but also to how our brains function. And if we don't have enough serotonin or norepinephrine or dopamine, we can feel anxious or sad, depressed. We might feel like we can't get out of our own way. We might feel like we can't move forward with our lives. So sometimes those chemicals can affect how we feel. Now, this is why I'm talking about exercise and food. Because it's not just about manipulating medications, although medications can be really, really helpful for people. And there are people who nothing else has worked for and medications have helped. There's three major neurotransmitters in depression: serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. There's probably a lot of them we don't know about yet, okay? There's probably other players that we're not aware of. There's also players in our body, so things like cortisol or adrenaline that are produced by the adrenal gland. They're not produced in our brain, they're produced in other parts of our body. And those also impact how we feel, whether we have a good day or whether we have a bad day, how we respond. Are we kind and loving in our responses, or are we grouchy in our responses? Are we aggressive in our responses? All those chemicals can impact how we respond. Look at what exercise does for all of them. All the serotonin, all the norepinephrine, all the dopamines increase when we exercise. Look at this, this is fun. The brain on the left is after sitting quietly. The brain after a 20-minute walk. Look how it lights up. So exercise is really, really important. And for some people, it really impacts them. I've struggled with depression all my life. And it took me probably about 20 years to figure out that if I take a walk every day, I am a kinder and gentler person. My husband now walks with me because he wants to make sure that I am a kind and gentle person. He has a lot of investment in that, poor guy. So, I think actually Free to Be Me, which is one of the books that's for sale, that's the one that talks about personality types. And whenever we lecture together, whoever lectures first always says, you know, my husband and I are really different people, him especially. So he's not here to defend himself today, so I'll say he's a very different person. But exercise does stimulate the brain and helps with feelings of well-being. Now, we can, if you have a very physical job, if you have a very physically demanding job, there is a break point with this. So there is a point at which we exercise too much. But very few of us in America are going to get there, okay? All right. Here's the big problem that many of my patients have with exercise is physical limitations. And this has been a challenge for me in my own exercise journey. So, you know how I said that different things work for us at different points in our life. So when I was a young woman, going to the gym was the best thing for me because I could go, I could do a really hard workout, and then I could come home. And that used to work with that kind of schedule. Then my practice got busier, and then my favorite gym closed. And then the other gym got really expensive, and then the showers were really nasty in one place. And the gym stopped working for me. And one of my best friends developed a back problem and couldn't go to the gym with me anymore. So that kind of shut things too. So different limitations can stop us, but there are some great resources out there. So if you want to exercise and you have physical limitations, you can see on the left is Dr. Jo. She's a physical therapist, and she has postings for everything. So she has a stop lower back pain. She has probably about 80 postings on YouTube. And so if you have things that you can't do, this is a great choice. Another great choice for people with physical limitations is a program called Bone Builders. Kathy Radford offers a version of that here called Senior Strength for free every Wednesday and Friday at 2 p.m. So one of the things I love about this space is this space has been used for banquets, for church services, for exercise classes. I mean, we've done a lot of different things, and this is a very great adaptable space for that purpose. So Senior Strength meets here, and how much does it cost, Kathy? How much does it cost?
Nothing.
Nothing. All right, so you can afford it too. All right. So Bone Builders, there's a lot of modified programs out there. I forget who it is, and I've heard it said by a lot of different people that there is no bad weather, there is only bad gear. Mm-hmm. That means if you dress right, you can get out in any weather. So I like to walk. That's what works for me right now in my life. Is I get up, I have my prayer time, I go for my walk, I have my breakfast, and then I go step into my day. So exercise is a really good thing. Bottom line, baseline, is I would recommend at least 150 minutes a week. That comes out to 24 minutes a day. You can do it however you want. You can do 50-minute workouts 3 times a week. You can do 35 days a week, whatever works best. I promise you, if you don't exercise and you start, it will help. It may not solve everything, but it will help some. So what I tell a lot of people when they're dealing with mental health, you're trying to build your mental health, you're trying to overcome anxiety, you're trying to overcome depression, you're trying to overcome PTSD. There's a lot of tools out there that will not solve the whole problem for you. A lot of times it's figuring out how to get 10% more. And when you look at Olympic athletes, that's exactly how they function, right? Is they want to shave a few seconds off that run so they can make that 4-minute mile, they can make that mile under a certain amount of time, or they can run that marathon a little bit faster. That's how we improve, and that's how we change. All right, so I want to talk about prayer, and I know that some of you are prayers and some of you aren't, but I'm going to recommend a very simple model. And part of the reason I want to talk about this is because there's some really good studies on it. And so if you have intellectual barriers to faith, I would be happy to talk to you about that, because there's some really good evidence-based information that talks about having a relationship with God and talks about faith and Christianity. Cold Case Christianity by J. Warner Wallace, Case for Christ, Lee Strobel, Surprised by Joy, C.S. Lewis. These are, all three of those men were atheists and became Christians when they started investigating the evidence for it. So if you're not, I'm not trying to push anything on anybody, but it is an important aspect of faith and health. But one thing I will say is that prayer changes our focus. And there's other ways to change our focus as well. So I like this little ACTS model, and I'm just going to run through it real quick. Looking at something other than yourself and your problems can be helpful. So that is what's called the adoration component of prayer. Confession. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just and will forgive our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. God can forgive our sins. Even if you don't believe in God, there's often relationships that we have that are broken, and we may need reconciliation in. And so sometimes that's something that was done to us and we don't have control over. But sometimes it's something where we might have a part, where we may have to go back and say, I'm sorry for what I did wrong. I'm sorry for my part in that. So that is something that is helpful. Thanksgiving. Giving thanks to God. One of the things that's become very popular, even in secular literature right now, in psychology, is gratitude. Writing down in your life all the good stuff that's going on. Writing down all the things that you've been blessed with. Can you get up and walk to the bathroom? You're better off than a lot of my patients. If you can feed yourself, you're better off than a lot of my patients. Everybody has things that are good in their life. What are yours? So think about that a little bit. And then supplication, asking God for his help, asking for what we need. And one of the great promises of Scripture is everyone who asks receives, and whoever looks will find, and whoever knocks will get an answer. Not always the answer we want. So I just want to say, if you would like prayer, feel free to let Judy or I know at the end, and we'll pray for you. And if you're not too sure about all this, take that prayer card and drop it in one of those baskets back there, and we'll pray for you quietly. All right, let's move on to food. So food is something, again, we can control. And I want to just go over a very basic illustration here. Food is composed of some components. So different parts of food do different things for us. So protein, fats, and carbohydrates are the simple building blocks of food. So proteins, beans, nuts, meat, fish, eggs, dairy, nutritional yeast for anybody who's a vegetarian out there, peas. They do some really important things in terms of healing. So if your protein levels are too low, it makes it harder for you to heal. It helps stabilize blood sugars. A lot of times when we have problems with our mood and our emotions, it's because our blood sugars have kind of taken a little nosedive. So if you find that every time you eat you feel better, you may have some inconsistency with your blood sugars. Protein helps promote mood stability. So here's some pictures of protein. Fats, we all know what fats are. We like them. They taste good. And there's a reason for that chemically. A lot of the things that help us taste The chemicals that help us taste are carried in fat. So that's why people love bacon. Bacon tastes good. The problem is that it can cause problems. So, but fats make us feel full. So if we follow a really low-fat diet, then that can make us feel anxious and it can make us feel hungry. So that's why a lot of times when people go on diets, especially if they go on a very strict or extreme diet, they'll feel hungry all the time because they're not getting enough fat in. Unsaturated fats are very important, and they're important for memory, thinking, and development. And there's some studies that are going on right now in terms of Alzheimer's and whether some types of Alzheimer's may be caused by not getting enough of the right types of fat. So here's a quick way to tell if you're not sure whether you're eating saturated fat or unsaturated fat. As a general rule, unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature, and saturated fats are solid at room temperature. So in general, anything that comes from an animal, coconut oil or palm oil, is a saturated fat. Saturated fats raise LDL. LDL cholesterol is the bad cholesterol that gets stuck in your brain and stuck in your heart. It causes heart attacks and strokes and probably some forms of dementia. And it increases what's called insulin resistance. So if you're a type 2 diabetic or if you're pre-diabetic, it'll make your blood sugars higher. Okay? It keeps you from being able to use the insulin that you have in your body. Unsaturated fats are typically your nut or seed or olive oils. Natural nut butters, like peanut butter, contains a lot of unsaturated fat, and it lowers the LDL and raises the healthy, the HDL cholesterol, which helps protect us against strokes and heart attacks. And it decreases insulin resistance. So it's interesting, they're both fats, right? But they kind of do different things. And carbohydrates, the last building block, gives us quick energy. Now, I'll tell you a little secret about myself. I am not great at doing my paperwork. And when I'm really, really, really behind, I mean, as opposed to just behind, which I usually am, but really, really, really behind, Jen Jubenville, who spoke earlier this morning, will go to Dunkin' Donuts and she'll leave anonymously a chocolate donut and a cup of coffee on my desk because she knows that I will stay and finish all my work if that happens. So carbohydrates give us that quick energy, but they can also promote mood instability. So my poor husband, I go home and I've been doing charts for 3 hours, a little cranky. But carbohydrates are very often our celebration and comfort foods, right? So, so raise your hand and shout out your favorite comfort food. Apple pie.
Wow.
Cake? Somebody said cake?
No.
Ice cream.
No.
Ice cream, yeah.
Any kind of dessert.
Any kind of dessert, yeah. Chex Mix, yeah, Chex Mix, yeah, you like the savories, yeah. So almost all of those have a lot of carbohydrate. The ice cream, you can almost say, well, there's some fat in there too, maybe some protein. So
Yeah, something.
yeah, so maybe some protein. So, but they can also have an addictive element and a craving element for some people. So very often when people crave foods, it's often a carbohydrate. And it becomes the craving that you can't fulfill. What do I mean by that?
You just want more.
You just want more,
One
yeah.
more and one more.
Yeah, one more, and you have some, and then you go to the refrigerator and you say, what else do I have here? It's not like ordinary eating where you eat, you enjoy it, you're full, you're done. You move on to the next event. So cravings are kind of compulsive, and they can cause us to gain too much weight, they can cause us to eat unhealthy, and they can also cause mood instability. This is a great book. It's available on Thrift Book for about $4. And it talks about how to manage your mood with your diet. So for a lot of my patients who come in and say, Dr. Mary, I don't want to hear about prayer again. Dr. Mary, don't tell me I need to take a medicine. this is a book that I recommend to them. One of the things I really like about this book is it's not like most diets. It's not necessarily to lose weight, although many people do go on it and lose it. But it's really about focusing on mood, attention, clarity of thought, how you feel. And it's designed, if you go off your diet, and you eat something you shouldn't, you're not penalized. You're not penalized. You just need to make sure you're getting all the good stuff in. So you don't say, oh, I blew my diet, giving up, like people do with Weight Watchers or something. You still focus on making sure you're getting in your good proteins and your good carbs and your good fats for that day. So the next day you start over and you go back on track. Okay. All right. I'm going to show a video, and I used to do a whole long presentation on medications, and I thought it was very stimulating, very well balanced. It got into the neurochemistry of the different drugs, and half the room was typically asleep at the time I was done. So I decided to try something a little different this time, and I want to show you a video that we did for a previous mental health morning. And it's 3 people talking about their experiences, some of which was with medication. And each of them found medication to be helpful. They were people who all came from kind of different backgrounds. Some of what they have to say is not necessarily about the medications, but finding the right medicine was helpful to them. Now, there are things that medication will not do for you. Just like Ricardo and Judy said, there are things therapy will not do for you. Medication will not help you eat better. Medication will not help you with a toxic relationship. Medication will not help you with a bad job situation. But medications can, for some people, be life-changing. I had a lovely, lovely woman who came in to see me, and she was a devout Christian, and she thought there was something horribly wrong with her because she was having a lot of problems in her relationship. She was never happy. She had confessed everything. She had gone to therapy. She had invested in 2 years of therapy. She was exercising. She was eating right. And she was still anxious every day. And we put her on some medicine and it all went away. She enjoyed her life. She still enjoys her life. Her life is good. So sometimes medication is the right answer for people. So I just